Dr. Joe Cagini on board with us right now from Akron Children's Hospital. Joe, tomorrow the NFL draft, and a lot of people pointing towards Tua. He's the name everyone's hearing with this draft. And with him comes 5 surgeries in his career in college football. A lot of people say he's injury prone. From a medical standpoint, what does injury prone mean to you?
Yeah, Ray, you're right about that. I mean, those two words cut like a knife to an athlete. And, we don't just see this at the pro level either as these college players are preparing to go up to the pros. It's down in the high school level, and it's on the guy's side, the girl's side. Those two words cut like a knife for an athlete. Injury prone. They're hurt all the time. They're really, not able to help our team. The one cliche you'll hear all weekend as we finally get into something live in sports is the draft. You'll hear this over and over again. This has kind of become the new catchword thing is the most important ability of an athlete is availability. Are you available to me as a coach? Can I rely on you? Will you be there when I need you when the games get going? And that comes back to being injury prone, like you mentioned before. And that's really a part of this equation that isn't all that scientific. There's a lot of things we look at, but there's a lot of, good fortune that goes into staying healthy too. And definitely when we're talking about football, high-level college into the pros, so high of a risk of being injured. There have been so many of our guys that we've drafted that you can remember, but the one who comes to name for me, what a beautiful athlete Courtney Brown might have been, the great defensive end from Penn State. He was maybe even more powerful than Myles Garrett, and he was going to be the best pass rusher, and he could not stay on the field. He had injury after injury. So a few things that we look at that might head toward injury prone. Number one is, do they have a structural injury? And so what I mean by that one's pretty easy. That's where they do all the fancy tests, the x-rays and MRIs and other things, and see, is there arthritis in the joint? Is there a loose body in the joint? Is there something structural going on that could say, hey, this athlete may not make it through a lot of years of being on the field and staying healthy? Secondly is, there's a thing, Ray, called born with abnormalities, the way people are born with certain things that predispose them to having injuries. We used to call it, there was a word called congenital, but people have an extra bone in their foot or an extra bone in the back or the way they're, the knock-kneed or other things that can predispose them to certain injuries. And so abnormalities you're born with can be a part of that too. A big thing we look at in sports medicine, number 3, is balance. Imbalance, particularly in muscles. 3 big areas where you see balances. The front of the chest and the back of the shoulder, those should be balanced. The abs and the core and the spine muscles, and the hamstrings and the quads. When those muscles are out of balance, there's really a real big chance of muscular injury or other injuries, persistent injury that can lead to getting athletes injured all the time and off the field. So we look for weaknesses and imbalance. Another hot one now is looking at the gait mechanics, the way people run. So you see that we do the 4-cone and put them on the treadmill and watch people run and see if there's things about the way they run that could put them at risk. And one of the odd ones more lately is watching people play on film. There's a play behavior, a certain mindset that certain athletes have. I've heard a lot of coaches say this week there's some football players that never take a break on a play like Tua. I've heard people say that about him. He just never will let a play go, and so he takes a lot of late hits and twisting injuries at the end of a play that lead him, and they think that, hey, we can get him out of that. We can get him away from being one of those players who never quits on a play. So there are some things that we look at to try to keep people out of that category of injury prone. But you know the nature of sports very well. There just is some people that have risk, and they head down that road of injury, and we never get them back. And you and I could name for the last decade or two in Cleveland sports many people that just could not get back on the field because of injury.
But that's interesting the way you laid it out, Joe, because of balance and their gait and certainly genetics. All that stuff goes into it that does play a role in the possibly an injury prone athlete. Great stuff. Joe, good. Thanks for coming on with me again, my friend. We'll catch up with you next Wednesday.
Great catching up, Ray. We're moving into spring here a little bit more, and let's hope that we can get out a little bit more, get to be a little bit more active, and get out of this from under this cloud we've been in here medically for a while.
I agree 100%. Thank you, Joe. Be safe and well.
You too, Ray. Thanks.
All right. Dr. Joe Congini, Akron Children's Hospital.